Hey you guys, Greg here, and I'm back to answer your questions, fresh back from the NAM show. I'm a little bit tired, but I told you guys I would have a video this weekend, or at least by today. So I am here to do that. I was in at NAM in Anaheim, California, the past couple of days, and it's usually a pretty tiring, overwhelming event, but it was cool. I got to meet a lot of you guys there. A lot of you I didn't get a chance to meet, but there's going to be more NAMs in the future and everything. So I hope that all of you who ever want to attend will make it and we'll be able to catch up there at least. It was cool. This was my 23rd one, so I don't get as excited about certain things, but the boutique guitar exhibit, that's one of my favorite parts of NAM because some of the best builders from around the world who are doing stuff that I could never even imagine in a million years, maybe 1,000 years. How's that? I can never imagine doing some of the stuff that they do, and their level of creativity and skill is just mind blowing. So if you guys ever get a chance to go to NAM, you should always go check out the boutique guitar display. They usually have a section for that where a lot of lesser known or not as well known builders that present some of the finest works of art as far as guitar building is concerned. Couple of builders you should like look for, at least know about, as far as what they do, and is Ron Thorne. So Ron was basically he is a master builder for Fender, but he was well known and well respected for his inlay work. A master inlay craftsman. He's an artist, and Fender. I think he started working at Fender Custom Shop as a senior master builder within the last year or so. So he's doing incredible work there. So check out Ron Thorne. Most of you probably know who he is already. Another guy who a lot of you probably don't know is Tim Wilson, and Tim Wilson was my former boss and mentor. I had a chance with him to work with him after our Fender days together, and he's one of the best guitar builders that I've ever had the pleasure of working with. And like I said, if you don't know who he is, then you probably don't realize that he's the one that actually made the very first Randy Rhoads. So that very first prototype, the white one with the pinstripes, that has, it's basically a famous first Jackson guitar. That was Tim Wilson who did all the woodwork on that. Obviously he was working for Jackson Guitars, so he's not going to get the credit for that kind of stuff, but he was the one that actually did the woodworking on all of that. It's always a team effort in guitar building. There's never one builder that's doing everything from start to finish, and that's in most cases, like any custom shop. And any custom shop or even production shops for that matter, there's always guys who specialize in certain things, but Tim did all the woodworking up to paint. So he's the one that's basically responsible for that. He's responsible for a lot of the most coveted necks in as far as old Charvels are concerned. If you're into that neck shape, he's the one that's responsible for creating all of those. Obviously, like I said, there were other builders back then too, but he was an original Jackson Charvel builder, and he was the one responsible for a lot of the models that most people who know Jackson Charvel or love Jackson Charvel have grown to love. So he's basically came up with the Dinky model, defining the compound radius fingerboard. What else? A number of things. Basically defining the neck through body construction for how Jackson Charvel were doing it back in the day. So he's a pretty significant part of guitar building. A lot of the other master builders, a lot of them are marketed in a way where you know exactly who they are. They're put out there. They're presented on social media. They get a lot of attention and exposure. But this is pre master builder days. But Tim's around. He's still doing his thing. He's building on his own. He's building for another highly respected builder by the name of Nick Sugimoto out of Japan. So Tim basically is creating all of the USA branded, USA built models for the Sugi brand is what it's known as. So that's someone you should check out. TP Wilson at TP Wilson on Instagram. Anyway, I want to get into some of the questions that I got. Some of them, you guys are pretty funny. Um, Some of them are pretty cool, good ideas. Alberto Aguilar asked if I can do a peel and tape series. That would be a really cool thing, and that is something that I would probably talk to our painter over at ESP USA if he wanted to do something like that. He likes to give videos like that, and he would be the one to kind of get into doing those kind of videos for you guys. It's definitely a fun thing to watch, very therapeutic. Having peeled thousands of painted bodies and necks myself, it's actually very fun to peel the tape off all the bindings and just watch it come off. So I get that 100%. Thanks for the question, Alberto. Josh Izzy, how you doing, bud? Thanks for the support. And Jim X, thanks for checking in. I appreciate it. And we have Mike, Mr. Mike. I appreciate your support. Thank you for your support of the USA shop. Purchasing 2 of our guitars. That is awesome. I appreciate that very much. And Josh asked, how did I get started? So as far as getting started in the guitar building industry, I started working for Jackson Charvel when I was about 20. I think I had just turned 20 or so, somewhere around there. No, actually, it was August of 1994. So I was 20 already, and I was going to school before that. I was in an auto body program, basically learning how to do auto body and paint. So I was doing a lot of that kind of shaping, sanding, blending, painting, and stuff already. So when he had heard that, we had a common interest of softball at that time, and Tim Wilson, who I was speaking of earlier, who made the first Randy Rhoads, he asked me if I would, if I would, want to work there. He looked at my application and basically thought I would be a good fit, and they were looking for someone who didn't have any experience. So there weren't too many guitar building schools back then. There was Roberto Venn, that's been around for a long time in Arizona. I obviously, being from Southern California, didn't have a chance to really go out that way. I didn't even know about it because I didn't even know I was going to go into guitar building as a career path. But I was always a guitar player, and always into guitars, loved the guitar, always passionate about guitars. Never really had any experience other than that. And they wanted someone to come in who didn't have any experience because they wanted to train me the way they wanted me to do it, because they were bringing the other guys in and they were basically changing the process. And a lot of times you don't want to have someone coming in changing processes because it can affect the outcome or the results, the quality. So they brought me in, trained me. I excelled at it, and I had a chance to basically, I came in and started doing fret work, and then I went into the paint department and help out part-time in there, and started taping stuff off, doing paint prep, things like that. I started to do airbrushing, as far as airbrushing bursts on guitars that needed a burst finish, and then advanced from there. So I would kind of bounce back to fret work, and that when I would get ahead in fret work, I would go into other departments and ask the lead supervisor or the go-to guy in that department if he can personally show me their process for doing different tasks. So I was able to learn from the best of the best as far as that goes, and I was really hungry to learn, and I always wanted to be the best, be the fastest at it as well, because in a production shop it's more than just being really good at something. You also have to do it within a certain time frame. There's time constraints attached to a lot of what you do. So I was always really fast as well, and that was something that was important to me. Fast, but I had to be high quality as well. So that was pretty cool. So that's where it started from there, and I kind of had a chance to work in all the different departments, and I ended up taking over the final assembly department in 4 years later. So I started in 94, and about 4 years later I think I started take over the final assembly department, and just making sure the fit and finish of the guitars were to what they needed to be. And at the same time, the way that shop was set up with Jackson Charvel, where I started, it was a lot of it was you get production guitars like just off the line, but then you had some real custom stuff come through as well. So I had to manage both of those. as far as assembling customs and thinking about it was kind of like a high mix as far as the customs were concerned. One custom was completely different from another, and the build was different, and the process was slightly different depending on the parts and components going on into it and everything like that. But that was basically my background there, doing all the final assembly, fretwork, setup of the custom shop instruments, and went from there. And then worked under, I had some management, a little bit of management training and lean manufacturing training from there, working at Fender for about 5 years. After we were bought, Jackson Charvel was bought by Fender Musical Instrument Corporation. And so from there, I worked there for about 5 years. And in 2008, I left, and I was basically went back to school. I did a lot of things in about 4 years before I started at ESP. I went back to school. I got a degree. I was, learning, management, production management, stuff like that. I was running my own small business on my own for those 4 years. And then I started working part-time with Tim Wilson because he needed some help there. And it was a good opportunity to have some one-on-one with him as well. From there, I got hired. There was an opportunity that came up at ESP Guitars, and I started there. Not really knowing what department I was going to be in exactly, but they needed some help in their wood shop and started in there. They saw how skilled I was, because everyone kind of bounced around, and they saw how skilled I was at the at final assembly and how clean and quick I was at that stuff. So they brought me into final assembly, and I kind of took over that department. So I defined all the processes in there, while at the same time suggesting that everybody kind of stays in their own spot, like in their own departments, and develops a process for each, and they become masters of that department and process, and develop it and define it, and then from there they can be cross-trained in other areas. But what was happening was we had guys that would work one day final assembly, one day that same guy would go into wood shop. And what happens is when you have guys bouncing all over the place in the shop, it ends up being you end up having to set up constantly. You're always constantly setting up, thinking about what you have to do, instead of it just being more, I don't want to say robotic, but more just kind of like automated, as far as exactly what needs to be done and how, what the process is, what the steps are, what tools you're going to use, things of that nature. So once we were able to switch everyone to kind of staying within their own spot, their own department. So I kind of suggested we departmentalize stuff. There was other guys in the shop who were on board with that as well, and they understood the value of that. And once all that stuff kind of came together, that's when the shop really took off and you really started to see stuff go up as far as quality levels and creativity and things of that nature. So it's been a really cool ride so far. I'm happy to be there. So I'm less hands-on now, more like supervisory type stuff. So I don't get as much chance to be hands-on anymore. It's not like I have outgrown it, because that's what I love more than anything, is being able to be hands-on. But also too, the importance of management and making sure that overall operations are continuing and moving and growing, and keeping the machine moving is very important as well. So that was my background with that. So that's how I got started. Basically, no experience. They wanted someone who didn't have any experience, which is not usually the case with a lot of this stuff. I hope I answered that question thoroughly. Patrick Barnes, a shredder, someone that I respect very much as a player. Basically, he's asking about alternative neck shapes, or like different neck shapes, if we're going to start using different neck shapes in the USA shop. Honestly, Patrick, some of that stuff is up to like my superiors, as far as product development and sales and marketing and everything like that. I can usually suggest things, based on feedback and what people are really looking for, and that's something that they look at as well. We have kind of a decent mix as far as neck shape. So certain models will have a specific neck shape. Like, for example, if we have an M So that's basically our double cutaway neck through, for example. If we have our M, that's an extra thin U neck shape. That's what that model will have. We won't like offer different neck shapes for a specific model. So like an Eclipse, it's going to have a neck shape. It's going to be a thin U. It's not quite as thin. So we won't deviate from that kind of stuff. But if we add a new model, for example, you might start doing something like that, you know. But for the most part, we offer a thin U and we offer an extra thin U right now. So we have a 42 millimeter nut width and we have a 43 millimeter nut width, which you're talking about like a 1 5/8 nut and a 1 11/16 nut for, you know, for the American audience who are used to Gibson and Fender terminology, you know, as far as measurements go. So yeah, we won't deviate on one model. Like we won't offer custom neck shapes or anything like that. So I hope that answered the question. Let's see here. Now Rodrigo Betancourt, he basically he asks if there would ever be the possibility of getting an opportunity to work in, you know, in you know, like a big name shop like Fender, Gibson, ESP. You know, he's concerned if that's even a possibility. And yeah, that's always a possibility. And I cover a lot of that. I'm writing a book on that, and I wanted to have something tangible, something you can refer back to, something you can hold. You know, I'm kind of old school like that. I don't think digital is good for everything. You know, video and stuff like that. I think it's also good to have it in physical print as well. So I'm working on a book for that. I still don't know how I'm gonna put it out. You know, whether it just be a digital ebook or, you know, actually have physical copies, because I think I see the value in physical copies as well. But I talk about that, and a lot of it's about relationship building and who you know. Honestly, in any business, not just guitar building, in any business, it's who you know. And sometimes the best person for the job doesn't always get the job. Sometimes it's somebody because you're friends or you know somebody. I prefer to hire people that I know who can do the job. That's not always the case, and you know, obviously it's kind of sad, because if you have the skills and everything, you should get the job. But in the real world, it's basically building real relationships, not building superficial ones, or because you know you know, there's more to it than friending someone on social media and asking questions, or you know, sometimes that can be off-putting as well. Say, if you're generally interested, you have things you want to know, that's one thing. But if you're being like overbearing, kind of pushy about it, or like, you know, like sometimes that's going to be like, I don't even want to deal with this. I don't want to deal with this guy because he's being a little too strong about it. So I think just building honest, genuine relationships, it takes a long time. It takes a long time in the real world to make solid, lasting relationships. So the same thing with on social media. So if you're patient, you develop your skills, you kind of show what you can do. That's the thing. It's not always about guitar building school. Sometimes guitar building school, certain companies look at it as that's the stepping stone, that's the first step as far as getting a job. And then it's knowing somebody, and then, you know, it goes on down the line from there. So I can't say that guitar building schools aren't valuable, because I know a lot of people who started going to like a guitar building school like GCA, and that's really helpful for kind of getting people introduced to what it takes to be, you know, a guitar builder. But it doesn't really show them what it's like to be working on a production line. It's not the same thing. So I think sometimes people are disillusioned with coming into guitar building, that they're going to be able to take all the time and care that they want. But realistically, when you work for a big company, it's numbers driven, it's money driven. It's always going to be the case. That's what they're in business for, obviously. But you want to be really cognizant of the fact that when you go work for a company, you might have learned one way, but you may not be doing it that way. You might be doing it a completely different way. So you need to realize that as well. And be open to changes, and be open to learning new things, and not thinking that because you went to a guitar building course that you know exactly what needs to be done and how to do it. And I would say that's the biggest downfall with people I've seen. They come in thinking that they know everything, but really working within a big factory, they have to basically not necessarily forget about what they learned, but they're there to learn the way that company wants them to do certain tasks, or want to build a certain way. So that's really, really important to take in. So I hope that answered your question. I can go a little bit more on that, whenever. But anyway, I just wanted to kind of touch up with you guys. Those are my main points for this video. I hope you find it valuable. Like I said, I couldn't catch up with a lot of people who are going to be at NAMM. For those of you that I didn't get a chance to say hi to, I just wanted to thank you, and we'll catch up again sometime, somewhere, wherever, whether it's NAMM or somewhere else. But anyway, I hope you guys found this video valuable. I appreciate you guys watching, and continue to leave comments, continue to leave feedback. Obviously the whole thing is like and subscribe so it can grow, so it can reach more people, so they can, get some of this information and learn some things. And I may get into like more instructional stuff in another point. And I had some really good questions from people at NAMM that I ran into, and what I'll do is I'll kind of have to do some research on some stuff. I'm not abreast on every new product that comes out, or so I have to do a little bit of research on some of that stuff. So I won't always be able to get to certain questions right away, so bear with me. I won't forget them. I just need to take a little bit of time to dive into them and learn a little bit more, because like I said, I don't get a chance to try out every new product out there if I'm asked about a specific product or my thoughts on it. But I will get to it at some point. But anyway, I appreciate you guys watching. Thanks again, and I will see you soon. Leave comments and ask other questions that you might want to know about. Thanks.